The first parachute jump of the Soviet airborne forces happened on the 2nd of August 1930 in the Moscow military district. Airborne landing detachments were established after this experimental jump. In December of 1932, a revolutionary military council order established an airborne brigade from the existing detachments in the Leningrad military district. This was the 3rd Special Purpose Airborne Brigade. Later, 2 more brigades and 3 airborne regiments were set up. The number of the airborne units rose from 5 to 10 in late 1941, but then all of them were converted into Guards rifle divisions in the summer of 1942. The Soviet airborne forces were mostly used as infantry during the war. Only a few small airborne drops were carried out in the first desperate days of Operation Barbarossa in the vicinity of Kiev and the Kerch Peninsula. Then, a very significant airborne operation of the war was the Dnieper operation in September of 1943, involving a temporary corps formation consisting of the 1st, 3rd and 5th Airborne Brigades. After the defeat of the German forces in the Battle of Kursk, the bulk of the airborne divisions joined in the pursuit of German forces to the Dnieper River. The Stavka, the Soviet High Command, earmarked 3 airborne brigades for use in an airborne operation as part of the crossing of the Dnieper River. The 1st, 3rd and 5th Guards Airborne Brigades were intended to secure the far side of the river. The Soviets, sensing a critical juncture, ordered a hasty airborne corps assault to increase the size of the bridgehead before the Germans could counterattack. On the 21st of September, the 3 airborne brigades got the urgent call to secure a bridgehead perimeter 20 kilometers wide and 30 kilometers deep in the Dnieper loop between Kaniv and Rishev. The arrival of personnel at the airfields was very slow, necessitating a 1-day delay from the plan. Consequent mission changes caused near chaos in the command channels. Mission change orders finally get down to the company commanders on the 24th of September, just 15 minutes before the takeoff. Not yet provisioned with spades, anti-tank mines or ponchos for the autumn night frosts. Owing to the weather, not all assigned aircraft had arrived at the airfields on time, if at all. Further, most flight safety officers disallowed maximum loading of their aircraft. Given fewer aircraft and lower than expected capacities, the master loading plan was abandoned. Many radios and supplies got left behind. In the best case, it would take 3 lifts to deliver the first 2 brigades. Units still arriving by the overtaxed rail system were loaded piecemeal onto returned aircraft, which were slow to refuel owing to the less than expected capacities of fuel trucks. Meanwhile, already arrived troops changed planes, seeking earlier flights. Urgency and the fuel shortage prevented aerial assembly. Most aircraft, as soon as they were loaded and fueled, flew in single file instead of flying abreast to the dropping points. As core elements made their flights, the troops, half of whom had never jumped except from training towers, were briefed on the drop zones, assembly areas and objectives only poorly understood by platoon commanders still studying new orders. Meanwhile, Soviet aerial photography, suspended for several days by bad weather, had missed the strong reinforcement of the area early that afternoon. Non-combat cargo pilots ferrying 3rd Brigade through drizzle expected no resistance, but instead they were met by anti-aircraft fire from a Kampfgruppe, a battle group of the 19th Panzer Division, which only coincidentally transited the drop zone. Some paratroopers began returning fire and throwing grenades even before landing. Trailing aircraft accelerated, climbed and evaded. Some pilots avoided the drop points entirely, and 13 aircraft returned to airfields without having dropped at all. Intending a drop over largely undefended terrain, the Soviets instead achieved a 30 by 90 kilometer drop over the fastest mobile elements of 2 German panzer divisions. On the ground, the Germans used white parachutes as beacons to hunt down and kill disorganized groups and to gather and destroy airdropped supplies. Captured documents gave the Germans enough knowledge of the Soviet objectives to arrive at most of them before the paratroopers. Back at the Soviet airfields, the fuel shortage allowed only 298 of 500 planned sorties, leaving core anti-tank guns and 2,017 paratroopers undelivered. Of 4,575 men dropped, some 2,300 eventually assembled into ad hoc groups, with missions abandoned as hopeless, and spent most of their time seeking supplies not yet destroyed by the Germans. Others joined the partisan groups operating in the area. Thereafter, the German units largely ignored the Soviet paratroopers to counterattack the Soviet bridgeheads. The Germans deemed their anti-paratrooper operations completed by the 26th, although sabotage actions against garrisons, rail lines and columns were conducted by remnants up to November of 1943. The Germans called the operation a fundamentally sound idea ruined by the dilettantism of planners lacking expert knowledge, but praised individual paratroopers for their tenacity, bayonet skills, and the use of the ground in the sparsely wooded northern region. Stavka, the Soviet High Command, deemed this core drop a complete failure. Lessons they knew they had already learned from their winter offensive core drop in Vyazma had not stuck. They would never trust themselves to try it again. Soviet 5th Guards Airborne Brigade, withdrawing to the forest south, eventually amassed a brigade-sized command, half paratroopers, half partisans. They finally linked up with the Soviet forces on the 15th of November 1943. After 2 more weeks of combat, the airborne element was evacuated, ending a catastrophic 2-month period. More than 60% of the paratroopers never returned.